And you'll see that at the Q&A box on your screen. At this point, I'd like to hand over to our country CEO, our host, Khalid Eldakani. Khalid, over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Fola. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the fourth and final webinar in the Lafarge Africa Sustainability Series. The last 3 weeks have been engaging, very enthusiastic, great panelists. This afternoon, our conversation will be centered on how we can progress on the SDGs and the opportunities the circular economy, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics offer. We have great thoughts, leaders in our midst in today afternoon. It's my honor to welcome Professor Aliyu Jaro, Director General of the Nigerian Environmental Standards and Regulation Enforcement Agency, Mr. Tanko Ibrahim Mohammed, Managing Director of Peugeot Automobile Nigeria Limited, Dr. Ainuji Iruni, Chief Operating Officer Owando Energy Resources, my colleague and our internal guiders, Axel Peters from Lafarge Holcim Group, the Corporate and Global Regional Head of Geocycle. We also want to appreciate and thank our board members, our chairman, and we acknowledge their participation. I want here to specifically mention Mrs. Aniken Aduwali, who has joined all of our sessions from the very first week. Thank you, madam, for joining us again and much appreciate your engagement. Thank you, Wally, for moderating this session. My appreciation goes to everyone around the table and beyond who's joining us today. Thank you for staying throughout for the good cause, and we look forward for an engaging and insightful engagement with all of you. Thank you so much, and I look forward to a great session.
Thank you very much, Khalid. Before I hand over to our moderator, Wale Famurewa, and we have a very short interactive poll, which should pop up on your screen in a moment. And I'd like to invite all our participants, please, to just spend a few moments answering the two questions that should be displaying very shortly. Okay, as we wait for that to come up, allow me to introduce our moderator. Okay, so you do have them up here. So it's showing here, do you agree that the SDGs provide an opportunity for national development? So that's the first question. And the second one is, do you think a dedicated pipeline for women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM, will bridge the gender gap in the corporate sector? So we'll just spend a few moments for you to complete that. And we'll also be able to display instantly the results of your feedback. Thank you. So can we, I think the answer should be popping up in a few moments. And you've all spoken, thank you. So for the first one, it's a resounding agree. So that's very, very clear. I don't think there's any debate about that. And for the second one, also a resounding yes, in terms of it being a definite for women really to play a really key part in the STEM corporate sector. So thank you all for that. And again, we'll take those insights and incorporate them with all the others that we have received. So just before I invite our moderator to take over, I'll just say and introduce him. Wale Famurewa is an award-winning anchor, producer, and former West Africa editor at CNBC Africa. He is the presenter of CNBC Africa's Daily Markets program, Closing Bell, West Africa. He was previously a fellow responsible for strategic communications and stakeholder engagements at the Nigeria Economic Summit Group, Nigeria's leading think tank focused on advocacy and intervention for a more open and competitive business environment. Wale is a highly sought after business event host and moderator of panel discussions on a range of business topics. He has moderated lots of recordings and events, including the annual presidential dialogue at the Nigeria Economic Summit Group and the World Economic Forum on Africa. The floor is yours, Wale. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Folashade. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are across the world. I'm delighted to moderate this session. The topic is the roadmaps to progressing the SDGs, the opportunities in the circular economy, and science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And I'm delighted to join you all in covering these issues. I'd like to quickly begin by introducing some of our panelists and just to give you some background on, just to give you some information on their background. First is Professor Aliu Jauro. He's the Director General, National Environmental Standards and Regulation Enforcement Agency in Nigeria. He assumed that office in 2019, and before his appointment, Professor Jauro was the Deputy Director at the National Center for Petroleum Research and Development at the Abubakar Tafawa Balewa University. He holds a bachelor's degree in industrial chemistry from the same university, as well as an MSc and PhD degrees in industrial chemistry, also from the same university. Professor Aliu Jauro won the German Academic Exchange Scholarship and the European Association of Organic Geochemists Travel Grant in 2005, and he's also a fellow of the Chemical Society of Nigeria, as well as a member of the Institute of Chartered Chemists of Nigeria, and also a member of the Polymer Institute of Nigeria. Professor Aliu Jauro, it's great to have you joining us today. We also have on the panel today Mr. Ibrahim Tanko Mohammed. He is the Managing Director of Peugeot Automobile Limited here in Nigeria. He has a degree in agricultural economics from the prestigious Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria, and he has also bagged an MSc degree in banking and finance from Bayero University in northern Nigeria, Kano. He has well over 30 years extensive experience in the Nigerian banking sector, and that includes a role as Executive Director, IT and Operations, and Executive Director, Central of Unity Bank. He is also an alumnus of the Harvard Business School, the Lagos Business School, Oracle University Dubai, and the prestigious Barewa College. Mr. Mohammed, thank you so much for joining us. Next up is Dr. Aloses, and you could describe him as a strategist and accomplished business leader. He's a proponent of transformational leadership, and he joined Oando Energy Resources Management in 2018. Before that, between 2013 and 2016, he served as the head of corporate communications and in this role, he oversaw the internal and external brand building efforts across the company. Of course, we're talking about the Oando Group now. And prior to his time at Oando, Dr. Irune worked in the United Kingdom as a researcher and in-vehicle system designer with Nissan, Honda, and Jaguar Land Rover. He's a graduate from the University of Nottingham with a BSc in computer science, and he also attained a PhD also in computer science. Dr. Irune, thank you so much for joining us today. And last but certainly not least, we have Alex Peters. He is the global head at Geocycle. Now, Geocycle is a circular waste management multinational that is active in 50 countries and employing 2,000 people. He has over 25 years work experience in waste management and also joined Geocycle about 18 years ago. And he has an economic and marketing degree and executive MBA from Erasmus University over in Rotterdam. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to get right into it. And I think it would be great to start with you, Alex, because I think your role is very closely linked to the theme of today's program. And there is clearly a strong link between the circular economy and the environment. And I wanted you to perhaps begin by sharing your thoughts on the interrelationship and how you think that these links can be enhanced for us to really to really attack what has been widely described as the triple bottom line. So we're talking about people, the planet, and profit. So I'll hand that over to you as we begin the conversation.
Thank you very much for giving me the first lead in this discussion. For me, waste management and a discussion on circular and linear sounds for me too obvious. We are producing, as humanity, 2 billion tons of waste every year. And at this moment, only 90% is actually treated, non-treated. It goes linear into a landfill or sometimes into waste incineration, which is also not very circular, and only 10% goes into a more circular approach. It can be recycling of PET bottles, which we know. But actually, when we look to the total volume of waste, it can actually grow to and 90% can be circularly treated. So we're missing here an opportunity. So waste is a very important chain into the circular economy and in also preserving our earth. So let's start with the earth. We are polluting, we are emitting 12 million tons of plastic in the ocean every year, which is a waste actually, because actually that should be a resource. And we're polluting our earth in a quite rapid tempo. We see landfills building up. We have more population, more urbanization. People are living closer together. We see that everywhere in the world. We see this also in Nigeria, where we have people more and more living in the cities, producing more waste. We also get more wealthy, so we produce more waste. So it becomes a accelerating scenario where we actually are out of control. And I think that we are close to a situation where we really have to take a linear, a circular approach to save our earth from polluting. Cleaner air, cleaner soil, cleaner rivers, cleaner oceans. That all is possible. If we would take that route for people, what would it mean? It means a lot of jobs. If you look to the mature markets in the world where environmental protection is on a higher level, it's really bringing a lot of business. It's bringing a lot of employment for people, but on top of it is also giving clean and nice living environment for people. We don't want to be close to landfills. Landfills nowadays are in the cities, where 20 years ago when they built them, they were outside of the city. Because of the growing city, they are now in the city, and they become a big problem. So for people, it means clean environment, but also jobs. It will be a big job accelerator for people. And then profit, that's a difficult one, because if we really look on this short term is best to throw your waste into the ocean and into the rivers. But if we really want to look long term, then we have to pick up the bill now. If we do not pick up the bill now, the bill within 10 to 20 years will be way higher than what it is now, because we cannot continue like this. So that's my statement, that we really should start thinking circular as much as possible to regain waste as a resource and see it in a circular approach.
Right, but if you can, Alex, still speak to the point around the triple bottom line. So to a large extent, you have spoken to the issues around people, but I want you to speak more on the profit opportunity as we try to address the circular economy in the context of how we're trying to take better care of the environment.
The profit is a sensitive. So if you really want to do proper waste management, it will cost you money. The problem with waste management is that the cheapest thing you can do is landfill it or illegal dump it or burn it. That's not costing you anything. That's actually very cheap. So if you really want to take a next step, you want to do better, every next step will be a bit more expensive. Now, if you're a politician and you have to take a decision, it's not a very favorable decision to start talking about that waste management will cost money. But if you will move to that direction, you will see that you create an industry. So if we take, for example, Africa as a whole, there's still a lot of potential to expand your business on waste management. It's the first one actually which will move, will actually conquer a big market opportunity to actually clean up the country. However, waste is not a resource. You can forget about it by, for example, building a waste-to-energy plant and produce electricity, and then all that electricity would actually pay for everything. Unfortunately, that's not the case. The investment is too high. So if we really look to the profit is for the environment in the long term. If we have no fish in the oceans anymore and all our rivers are polluted with plastic and the land is scattered with plastic and we cannot produce our food anymore, what would be the bill of that one? Nigeria is a fast-growing nation. You will grow to, I think, 300 million people. That's the outlook. How do we feed these people? That means that we need land, we need to have a healthy environment, and we need to feed these people. But these people will also need to earn a job.
Right. Okay, thank you for that. I'll certainly come back to you, but I want to move over right now to Alex. Now, Alex, you're in management and in a company that is invested in oil and gas. And as Axel was making his points just now, I was just thinking about the fact that wherever you have people, you potentially have more and more pollution and very adverse impact on the environment. But what we've learned with the outbreak of COVID is that there could be actually a swift slowdown in terms of how much of, should I say, negative energy in quotes that we're producing. So I'm talking about everything around greenhouse gas emissions, and just the general improvement in air quality that followed the lockdowns and the fact that more and more people tend to be working remotely now. In your view, how can we embed this into our systems and culture, corporate culture today? What are the lessons from the last 6 months, essentially?
Thank you very much, Wale. I'd like to start by, thanking Lafarge for the platform to have these important discussions. We can choose to ignore the facts, but that doesn't change the facts. We certainly see a world that has been impacted by COVID. And whilst I would like to agree with you that there has been a shift in certainly utilization that has reduced the level of greenhouse gas emissions, I am sure you agree with me that we do not want to live in a world with this level of activity. We certainly want to live in a world with increasing activity, more activity, even more than we had before. The question is, for as long as it is activity that drives value, we want it. But that activity has to be propelled through the right sources. And I think that's what the discussion is about today, right? It's really about how do we shift the predominantly fossil fuel-based energy landscape we have globally to something that is a bit more, I think the reference Axel used was cyclical instead of linear. You could speak about, waste handling, or you could speak about the fact that no one ever factors the cost. And I'm talking about the, consequential cost of fossil fuel energy when they look at its investment. So you look at the fact that today we can generate a kilowatt hour of electricity cheaper through natural gas, through the fossil fuel method than, say, solar, for example. Now, I would argue that based on the projections we have seen, looking back from 2010 to today, solar energy prices have come down 60%. And if we look into the future, there'll be further degradations there. There'll be further decrease in that energy as it becomes more common. I would argue today that its actually potential is more expensive to the world, to the environment, and to us as human beings to generate some of this energy by fossil fuel. And for me, that is the foundation of the conversation, is how do we move the one thing, which is capital, really, into accelerate everything that Axel has just spoken about without regurgitating what he said. For me, there is a tipping point. As a continent, there's about just over 500 billion TCF of natural gas, right? And I think that is the first step. I think Africa needs to look at a progress that is not harmful to its future. Whilst we talk about renewable energy and its cost, and we understand the governments in Africa certainly struggle with budgeting for this. I think Axel spoke about even politicians trying to take decisions. We must utilize what we have to get to where we're trying to go. So that brings me back to, you know, the core of your question, which is how do we take and embed this into our systems and our cultures moving forward for the long haul? First step, utilize what you have to get what you want. In our case, as a country, Nigeria, oil is I could refer to Nigeria as a monoproduct economy. Oil and gas is a significant contributor to our national income and our revenues, especially on the foreign exchange side. And we must utilize that to ensure that the diversification that we see.
Sorry, Alex, I think we are getting some. If we can just mute our microphones just for a moment, I think we're getting some feedback from someone. But please go ahead, Alex. I think that's sorted.
So the first step is really to utilize what we have, which is oil and gas, to drive that diversification and investment into creating that circular economy that we want. The second is certainly encouraging investment in those areas through policy and frameworks that we can borrow from other countries. The Nordic countries certainly provide a global standard for how to shift entire economies into a renewable situation, I would say. And then lastly, we shouldn't be afraid of miniaturization. Miniaturization as a concept allows you take very, very complex ideologies, test them in small environments, small communities, and scale them up as your externals allow you. And that's something we shouldn't run away from as a continent and as a country. And those would be my opening remarks for now, taking everything we have to drive and cement what you've just spoken about into our core and our future.
All right, thank you so much for that contribution. We certainly will come back to many of those themes, but I'd like to now move over to Professor Jauro. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us today. And I want you to first focus on this framework described as the extended producer responsibility. I understand that it's a framework for action calling producers to partner with the government to reduce the negative environmental impact. Can you just speak to this so that everyone on the call today can appreciate what this is all about in terms of this framework and what are the opportunities as it relates to the circular economy? Because I think at the end of the day, yes, absolutely.
Should I continue?
Yes, I just wanted to say that there is an opportunity in the circular economy, and one of the things we're hoping to take away from this conversation is for those on the call to appreciate the opportunity and how they can plug in. So if you can just explain the framework and the opportunities.
Okay, the extended producer responsibility is a framework of action in which the producers, manufacturers, retailers, importers of any item is saddled with the responsibility of taking back that item at the end of its life so that we have a very sound environmental treatment of that material. So instead of the normal disposal, they are obliged to take back the item at the end of its life. So presently in Nigeria, the Epr program is being implemented across all the sectors of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. So in the Nigeria model, it is the industry-led approach where the manufacturers, the producers, the importers, and the retailers are those responsible. The only responsibility of the government is to come in and moderate to ensure that everything is done in the right way. So the EPR is an innovative waste management strategy. It has taken out the burden of the waste management from government. So the EPR promotes circular economy. And we know that by implementing the circular economy, the 5 R's of the waste hierarchy, that is the reduce, reuse, repair, recover, recycle in the value chain is being implemented through this EPR program. It will also change the linear waste method where we have production, consumption, and disposal. And we are changing to the circular model, which it enters production, consumption, and recycling. That is, we always try to recover and recycle the waste at its end of its life. So the Nigeria EPR model, as I have said, is the industry-based approach. So the private sector are those that are well positioned to take the leading role in this EPR model by creating new value chains, which will bolster competitive agility in the circular economy. So they're expected to take the role of the corporate change agents responsible for driving the circular innovation with creativity. So presently we have PROs across some of these sectors that have already formed their PROs. We have the Food and Beverages Recycling Alliance. We have the Epr, the E-Waste Producer Responsibility Organization. And we also have the Alliance for Responsible Battery Recyclers. So the EPR encourages a regenerative system where resource input, waste emission, and energy leakage are minimized by narrowing energy and material loops. This can be achieved only through long-lasting maintenance, repair, reuse, remanufacture, refurbishing, and recycling. So the EPR has a lot of job creation opportunities. So presently, a lot of people are involved in this process, ranging from the collectors, the recyclers are involved, both informally and formally. But we are trying to formalize the process so that everything can be done in the best and sound environmental manner without affecting those involved and also without impacting on the environment. So it has a lot of opportunities, as I've said, especially in Nigeria. Treating waste as a resource has a lot of innovation. Some of these plastic wastes are used presently in road construction, in making interlocking tires, and also in bricks making, which can be used in building construction. Some of them are used in making pellets, which serves as raw material in some plastic industries for making another bottles and also for making PET bed sheets. We also have presses where this plastic waste can be used as a source of fuel. Already Lafarge Holcim, some of their cement factories, they have started taking in some of these waste plastics and they use them as fuel in firing their kilns. Other areas where this EPR system will produce opportunities include the e-waste, where a lot of valuable materials can be recovered, like gold, silver from the electronic component. And we also have other sectors, the metallic sector.
Yes, thank you so much, Prof, for that very comprehensive review. But if you can speak very briefly to what you are seeing in terms of the early successes of this program, which can hopefully inspire others to really jump in and participate. What can you see so far? But very briefly, if you can, please.
There is what I can say presently that the opportunities are enormous. There are a lot of value chains. So I encourage people to key in, especially the corporate bodies. They should key into this EPR program. They should try and register with the various PROs. Presently, we have even issued out an advertisement. We gave a deadline, and very soon we'll start enforcing to ensure that people key in.
All right.
Especially.
I am still going to come back to that issue because what we're hoping to do is to have a greater buy-in into what I think is it's an excellent program. You've mentioned that it's really an innovative waste management strategy, but as with most things, it's all about the implementation. But we'll come back to that. But I'd like to now move quickly to Mr. Mohammed for him to just share a few thoughts on this point. Now, if we examine SDG 9, it's really all about industry innovation and infrastructure. And these are issues that resonate with both the formal and the informal sectors. I would like you to speak to the opportunities for us to bring innovation and, if you like, industry as well into the informal sector, especially knowing that Nigeria is really an informal economy, really to a great extent. So can you just speak to this point? And maybe you can also speak to your experience at Pojo. Mr. Mohammed, are you there? We can't seem to hear you right now. You may need to unmute your microphone. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear
you.
you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in this discussion. This issue actually is looking at broadly two issues: infrastructure development and innovation, and then looking at the informal sector. So when we look at the infrastructural development in Nigeria, actually is a very, very big issue because it affects what the federal government does or even state government do in terms of budgeting. You realize that in Nigeria, budgeting for capital budgeting in Nigeria is in most instances less than 25%. That is if we look at even the actual budget made for the infrastructural development. But if you even look at budget implementation, it gives more pressure on actually the provision of the infrastructure, because implementation of budget in Nigeria, whether at the state or at the federal level, has been actually very, very low. And this actually hampers the growth of infrastructure in Nigeria. And industries, especially if you are looking at the micro, small, and medium enterprises in the informal sector, which actually forms a very, very big chunk of the businesses in Nigeria, which forms about 96% of the businesses in Nigeria, is actually suffering. And this informal sector, if you look at it, it looks at areas like agriculture, like motorcycle drivers, and all these small miniature jobs that we see on the road, which actually require this infrastructure. They require roads, they require electricity for somebody who is going to manage a barbering saloon. But these infrastructures have not been available. And again, when you look at the innovations that are being done there, innovation actually requires education, because innovation will require looking at what is happening today in probably the technology that is pushing something today, or the means of doing something today, and see what is happening in the developed world, or what should we do to improve what is happening today to make it better and more efficient, or probably less costly. So to do that, there is a requirement for somebody to make a study of the existing, what is existing currently. And when you do that study, you now see what are you going to do in terms of M&E to make sure you realize and you do something that is going to improve the current situation. So what is the problem there is that the educational system in Nigeria does not actually promote functional education. We give emphasis to academic education. We do not give emphasis to functional education. So our education system itself will need actually to be improved. By the time you do, you have a shift, complete shift in that kind of educational system that we have in Nigeria. Instead of giving emphasis to academic education, if we give emphasis to formal education, to functional education, it will do a lot. So that even at primary school, somebody will start learning techniques of doing certain things. So from that time, if somebody has been doing something from junior level, when he is growing, even within himself, he can be able to innovate. But if you don't allow him to do that, you don't even send him to school, he doesn't even go to school, he is learning something rudimentary, is going to be a huge problem. And again, there is the requirement for huge investment in that infrastructure, including what I said, electricity, transportation, water, roads. So this will have to be done, but we believe there's too much pressure on the public sector or on government. So we have to try to introduce what is the PPP, the public-private partnership, so that when this is introduced, the government is going to do their role, the private sector is going to do their role. So you can see there is going to be more provision of infrastructure, and then we're going to develop the infrastructure at formal and informal sector of the economy. So that will boost the right. Innovation that we want.
Okay, so still on the theme of education, female gender education and the opportunity to really get them in the mix in terms of getting them skills to participate in the opportunities that the circular economy is offering and so forth. Can you speak to that point, especially considering I imagine that you would be using a lot of people with technical skills at Pojo. So speaking specifically to how we can address the education of women in Nigeria.
Well, actually, it's a very, very important issue, because if you look at demography in Nigeria, the female gender is not necessarily fewer than the men we have in Nigeria. In fact, some of the statistics are even indicating there are more women in Nigeria than men. But when you look at their participation in what is happening in Nigeria, it's very, very minimal. So it's a very, very big challenge. So we need to bring them to the fold. And first of all, it is partly the culture of Nigerians that is actually pushing this gender out of mainstream. So we need to first of all try to see what we can do in terms of moral suasion, in terms of changing the culture, in terms of encouragement of these women consciously to pull them into the mainstream, to make sure that they participate. However, this actually is something we do. Our company actually, as an automotive, as an operator in the automotive sector, which actually possesses strong linkages with other industries in Nigeria, PAN has been actually able to create unique opportunities to several youths to acquire sound technical and vocational training to help them innovate and become entrepreneurs. This we have been doing severally. We have so many platforms that we create. We have what we refer to as the career development program, which we initiate even at secondary school level. We try to see what we can do to guide and make sure that we encourage the female gender and even the youth generally to take something to do with engineering, or specifically automotive engineering. We bring them in, we show them around to make sure that they even see how we produce vehicles from the initial to the last stage. So, but we also don't bother about saying we want to pick only the ladies, having only the men. We make sure that we mix the gender. We bring the ladies also and make them participate. Beyond that also, there are other things we do to encourage study of automotive engineering at the company level. We have what we refer to as the Peugeot Learning Center. In this learning center, we have everything that somebody needs to learn in terms of what you would require to do, the technical skills you require in production of a motor car. So we have, as at today, engaged more than 400 female trainees, and they have been able to pass through the system. They have been able to graduate. Some of them are working in the public sector.
Right. And
in fact, what I even observe is the majority of them are even in the private sector. So actually, we have practically and consciously tried to see what we can do to encourage the involvement of female in this kind of arrangement. And we always, the only way you can be able to see this, there must be a conscious effort. When we are doing this training, we encourage the sponsors of such trainings to make sure that they give a certain percentage of the slots to the female gender, so that we will make sure that we give that opportunity to the female gender. And what we even observe in many of the sets that come for the training, in most instances, the ladies even come top of the classes, and they do it actually happily. So it is something that we have been doing. It is something that we will continue to do. And it is something that we will encourage other people, other sectors in the economy to also imbibe it and continue to do it. And by so doing,
right,
we will be able to bring you on fold. I mean, in fold those people that we have abandoned all the while, who are constituting a major chunk of our population.
Right. Well, thank you for that. And just before I continue to engage the panelists, we are getting some feedback from some of the attendees that suggest that they are unable to hear some of you very clearly. So I'll just appeal that if you can just amplify your voice a little bit so that they can everyone can hear you clearly. But Mr. Mohammed, actually, I'm hearing that they can hear you perfectly. I think the feedback is more for some of the other speakers, but thank you very much for that. Okay. I want to go back to Axel. Axel, we've got to talk about this. Earlier, I mentioned that wherever you have people, you have waste. The more people you have, the more waste you have. Now, we have a pandemic going on across the world right now, and it means that there's a certain type of waste that we're getting quite a bit of. And what am I talking about now? Medical waste. And can you speak specifically to that opportunity? Because many may feel, it's just one of those things that we have to do, but not enough thought has gone into managing the waste linked to medical practices. So can you just speak a little bit to that, given your experience across the world?
Yes, we also offer solutions on this this part. Let's separate medical waste in two things. We have hospital waste, where we talk about infectious waste, which really imposes a risk when you move it out of.
Sorry, Axel, if you could just speak up a little bit, I apologize, just so everyone can hear you clearly. Yeah. Thank you.
So we have two kinds of hospital waste or pharmaceutical waste. We have on the one side the infectious waste, which is waste which comes out of hospitals after treating people. And then we have the other part, which is pharmaceutical waste, which are the expired medicines. The hospital waste, we offer solutions, but normally we see countries having small waste incinerators close to the hospital taking care of it. We offer solutions if you pack it very well. We can do this. Also in Nigeria, we have instructed our people to offer these services. We did quite a big part in China, where we took all the waste from the hospitals from Wuhan, where we have the start of the epidemic in the world, where we actually, as Huashin Echo, took all the waste, but then we need to double pack it, we need to double wrap it. Maybe the bigger threat for our health is expired medicines, which people normally throw in the bin, then they end up in the landfill. The landfill is raining, and then it ends up in our wastewater. Also there, we are very well suited to treat these expired medicines. What actually is missing is the collection system, which is required to actually get this material close by. So I also agree with an earlier speaker that EPR systems are for expired medicines good. For hospitals, we can offer solutions to treat it, but we need to double wrap it in plastic to make sure that our people are not infected.
But just to be clear, in terms of collecting, this is a private sector opportunity, right? It's not something we have to expect the government to organize. Is that right?
No,
so
not for hospital.
really...
Not for hospital, but we also need to be honest that at what currently the hospital is doing with it, and if they ship it for zero to the landfill, then it becomes a challenging thing. There also enforcement is required that for this, a new solution should be there, and therefore legislation and enforcement is extremely important to build up these schemes. But possibilities are there for sure, and quite quickly can be solved.
No, I think you make a very strong point, because at the end of the day, you've got to incentivize people to really embrace these better practices. And as you mentioned, legislation and enforcement is really at the heart of this. I want to come back to Alex. Thank you for your contribution, Axel. But going back to Dr. Alex now. Earlier, we were speaking about education, and I want to come back to that point, and maybe we can hear your perspective on this. How do you think Nigeria can embed a, if you like, a STEM approach? So we're talking science, technology, engineering, and mathematics to achieving sustainable growth and stability for the economy. So specifically, I want you to speak to getting people enlisted in the education sector to drive the effective participation of stakeholders. We need to educate people to prepare for the circular economy. What are your thoughts about the smart ways to get this done?
Thank you for that, Wale. And
sorry, Alex, we can't hear you. Okay, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that, Wale. And I really want us to cast our eyes on what's before us. There's a digital revolution that has been accelerated by COVID, so we have a perspective of what the immediate future is going to look like. I think your question really is, how is Africa, or indeed Nigeria, preparing itself for that? The whole point of STEM is really to, I think Alhaji Tanko called it functional education, right? Okay. If you look at everything in STEM, it's really about concepts and understanding principles so you can apply them. It's less of the kind of education we have. So the first thing I would say is we need to look at an overhaul, especially from a curriculum perspective of our educational sector, right? The reason I want to start there is very simple. The base has to be strong. The foundation has to be strong before we can build anything on it. It's a fact that today, as we speak, if you fast forward into the next revolution, 40% of the jobs we have today will cease to exist. Whilst over the last 50 years, Nigerians have been trained in, the academic way of administrative task law and the humanities, we will see a lot of automation in that service. I mean, as I speak to you, there today will writing software. So you don't need to write your will yourself. You just need to populate a few columns, and an artificial intelligence robot will do the rest for you. So there's a lot that is being automated. We have the Internet of Things. We have huge repositories of data being combined now with heuristic techniques and ways in which you can manipulate that data to forecast what is likely to happen in our future. So a lot of those tasks are really becoming obsolete. STEM ensures that the one key advantage anyone would have in the future of tomorrow, which is adaptability, is entrenched in our children and the generation that is right in the learning in the schools of today and will be in the schools tomorrow. So the first step is dealing with that curriculum and ensuring that it is suited for the future. Private sector plays a huge role here. One thing COVID showed us, and you all are all witnesses to the steps private sector had to take to ensure that not just from PPEs and medical equipment, but even supporting the less privileged and the entire value chain, or should I say social structure of our nation. I know people that personally have given the most they have in their entire life within this COVID time. We certainly know this is the largest healthcare expenditure we've seen in any government over the last 30 years. It is fact. And the point is, it shouldn't take a pandemic to do this. We must be involved. We must engage. We must educate. I have a friend running a tech company at the moment. He spends more of his time educating public sector to ensure the policies are shaped appropriately to guide us into this digitization age. And for me, that is the second step. Now, the third and final step is something that speaks to a broader concept, the concept of unification. At the end of the day, when all is said and done, we must ensure that as we build for Nigeria, we build for Africa. I keep talking about the movement of services and goods across the continent. This is something we must focus on because, in truth, the market Africa has to serve is the African market first. And if we understand this concept, then we will know that training our people, getting them ready for the next revolution, we speak about it as STEM, but it's truly a future we can't avoid, and getting our societies elevated to a level of prosperity that increases disposable income, creates activity, boosts industrialization. That's where we need to get to as a continent and as a country.
Yeah, thank you, Alex, for that. Much appreciated. I feel your passion, and hopefully we can get the right people to make the right moves for us to see these changes. Okay, so I want to mix things up a little bit. I want to go to our audience today. So some attendees have already been putting their questions in the Q&A field. And just to clarify, please, if you do have a question or comment, I want to encourage you to put it in there as opposed to the general chat field, because potentially it could get lost there. But I'll go to the chat field very briefly. And I'm coming to you, Alex, because I think in our audience, there are some people who would like to really appreciate how we can use waste. So specifically, we have a question on medical waste. How can we reuse medical waste? Help us appreciate the opportunity to reuse medical waste in a sustainable way. Very quickly, so I can get through other questions.
The question is to me, Axel.
Yes, Axel, it's to you. Please.
You mismatched Alex several times. I'm confused. No, in principle, medical waste is very difficult to be reused. Of course, pharmaceuticals can be reused, but you have to be extremely careful. So how we can actually treat them, we can do energy recovery of this material. So take the energy component out. That is also energy recycling and energy recovery. So that's what we can do also with hospital waste. That can be done. We can produce heat out of it or even electricity. So that's a better circular step than anything else. It is of course impossible to really recycle hospital waste. All these facilities are there. There are also installations like an autoclave, which is nothing else than a big microwave, which they can use in hospital for waste, and then actually you kill the bacteria, and then it becomes a way less harmless and dangerous waste stream. But energy recovery is the way to go for these materials, which we can offer in our cement kilns.
All right, so it's all about energy recovery from these materials. Thank you for that. All right, Professor Jaro, we have a question for you on the government's implementation of the 3R policy. Someone would like to know what are the opportunities for private sector participation, so specifically the 3R policy.
Okay, thank you very much. When you talk about the 3Rs, you are talking about the recover, use, and recycle. So they are up to even 5.
Right.
And, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please, we can. Okay. Yes, we can hear you. Yes, please go ahead.
So as an enforcement agency of the Federal Ministry of Environment, we have developed an EPR guideline, the Extended Producer Responsibility. And this EPR is a form of, it's a framework where the private sectors are encouraged to key in. So there are a lot of opportunities. You can come in as a collector, waste collector, and people can come in as recyclers. So we have various PROs I've mentioned that covers the various Manufacturers Association of Nigeria sectors, various sectors. So presently we have the Food and Beverages Recycling Alliance, which is a sector that deals with collection of plastic waste mostly. We also have the E-Waste Producer Responsibility Organization of Nigeria, Epr. So private sectors that are interested in keying in can meet these PROs, register and key into the process. There are a lot of value chains. People can make a lot of money. There are a lot of opportunities for young people to gain when they key in. So
right.
This is
okay, thank you for that. And hopefully you have helped the person that asked that question. Mr. Tanko, I have a question for you as well. I think someone would like to refer again to your comment about STEM and specifically educating females. The person says here, I am left wondering if the actions that you spoke of won't have a ripple effect in a bid to ensure that women participate. Less talented ladies are given the opportunities at the expense of more talented male counterparts. Now, typically, I think it's not unusual for us to get this type of feedback, but how would you respond to that, Mr. Tanko? Mr. Tanko, we can't hear you right now. I think you may need to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, if you remember what I said, in many instances, the female gender used to even top the classes when they come for such trainings. And more so, actually, we do this without compromising qualifications. We don't do it with compromising competency. We make sure that we have certain standards that all trainees that will come must satisfy those standards. And of course, it is only based on the assumption that the female gender are less educated or are less intelligent than the male gender. But I said earlier that even in terms of population, many statistics have indicated that we have more female gender in Nigeria than even male. So even if we put them at 50-50, so if you will have intelligent male, you will have intelligent females. So definitely we don't do it compromising the standards. We make sure that before you come in as a trainee, you satisfy those standards before we take you in.
Well, okay. Please, if I may, can I just
essentially merit-driven?
Well, sorry, can I come in here?
Sure,
just
go ahead,
to
Alex.
identify?
Yes, go ahead.
We're in the oil and gas business. It's predominantly male, driven. And I can tell you today from at least 3 recruitment agencies, global recruitment agencies, that when it comes to qualification and performance, we are seeing 3 competent women for 1 competent man. That is where we are in the industry. And this is a male-dominated industry. And I'll talk later about the things that we do at Owando to ensure that one of the things that Alhaji Tanko
you can do that now. I think it's a relevant conversation.
One of the things Alhaji Tanko said was, we must be intentional. And that is the operative word here, intentional. You would often look at a bias, and we will see this happen even in the digital age. If you look back 20 years and the person that has always held a role was a male, if you look at the last 15 CVs was a male, even that digital artificial intelligence tool would be biased towards a male. It's likely it will be. What we're saying is be intentional, shift that bias, and ensure that you give equal opportunity based on the standard set. And what we're seeing today is certainly the women are doing the men. For example, we have in our technical teams, typically industry average is about 12 to 16%. You have women. In our technical teams, we have above 35%. Today, we see in our leadership in the company, we have about 40% that are female. Industry standard, again, is about 20%. So these representations have to be driven intentionally. We can't just pray and hope that things change because we are biased to a history. It may be cultural, it may be professional, it may be the nature of the job, but certainly the landscape is changing.
Thank you for echoing that sentiment, which of course, I'm sure many of us have heard quite often. And it's great to see that the results, if we simply use the empirical and objective standards, you know, the women always show up as excellent hires. Okay, so I'd like to change things a bit and invite Mr. Khaled to take a question as well, if you don't mind. Khaled, concerning education, Lafarge Africa, I understand, also has a technical training school. How is Lafarge using this investment to feed the pipeline for the manufacturing sector in terms of technically skilled people? Can you just speak to your contribution in that regard?
Thank you, Wally. Well, I'll answer this. It's a very important question, and it reflects a lot of what Lafarge Africa is really demonstrating in Nigeria and beyond as part of a global international company. In Nigeria, one of our main sustainable development goals objectives that the company has been working on is education and literacy. We have context every year. We have competition of the best essays. We develop a lot of the communities around our plants to promote education. One of the challenges, and I will capitalize here on what Alex has reflected shortly, it's very difficult to look at your requirements from the outcome of the pipeline as we speak today, because there is a legacy and there is a history behind it. So it's very important to say, okay, and we echo Alex in being historically a male-dominated industry as well in the cement industry. So when we look about gender diversity, increasing the number of females versus males in terms of the composite of our organization structure, we have to look at the requirements that we need in our industry from one end. The second end, which is very important, is the current pipeline filtering these requirements in terms of the proportionate gender diversity as well. So how many mechanical engineers in terms of females graduated from universities and colleges versus male? Because we cannot isolate the two facts. You need a flow of input from gender diversity structured to be able to reflect it on your working environment. Otherwise, the equation will be extremely difficult. And you cannot be biased in the selection, because at the end of the day, when we talk about gender diversity, you need to be fair in the selection of the criteria, not only meeting a percentage. You would rather meet the percentage in a sense that it becomes seamless. What you focus on is competent, qualified females graduated from the system and has better standing, better chances in getting the same fair opportunity in the recruitment market. So when we look at Lafarge Africa, we decided to start the process from the beginning. So our gender diversity education level is not now targeting universities, rather educating the small generation coming into the system, because this is how you gradually over years start establishing this balance in terms of gender diversity that are getting fair and equal chances in education. So in Lafarge Africa, we look at education in schools, ages of 5 to 7, 8 years, and then we're building these generations onwards to make sure that the end goal of graduated males and females are quite balanced to meet the job requirements, whether in the cement industry, oil and gas, or any other activities. So that's one main part of our strategy and philosophy when it comes to gender diversity. The second important part.
Thank you.
Is when.
Okay. Go ahead. If you can make
go
it
ahead. No,
concise,
that's fine.
because I really still would like to take some more questions.
Sure.
No, go ahead. Please finish your point.
The second important part, which again, Lafarge Africa is very proud of, is when we look at the current structure. And again, I will echo part of what Alex mentioned, that despite the fact we are a male-dominated quote-unquote industries, our ExCom in Nigeria is 40% gender diversified. Our gender diversity is not into the segments where we call back office, rather than engaging in critical activities in legal function, communication, sustainable development, health and safety, and so on. GM, P&L responsibilities in one or two business lines that we have. So the structure is there. I think being pragmatic about it, since we are talking about sustainable development, is we have to tackle the root cause problems. The pipeline is not generating enough calibers in the market in terms of numbers to be able for companies, multinationals, corporates to start reflecting this gender diversity fairness in job opportunities in the way that we desire. So we need to look at the education system, and we need to make sure that the education system is fixed in a way that generates this outcome at the end of the day.
Thank you very much, Khaled. Very well said. Okay, I want to come back to Professor Jauro, and there's a question here that I think I would like you to chime in on. It says, we need to find ways of making the SDGs more understandable and popular in Nigeria. And this applies to all stakeholders. So he's not speaking just to the man on the street, but even corporate Nigeria, entrepreneurs and so forth. So he would like to find out your thoughts on how we can be deliberate in making that happen. As good as leveraging on tech is, he says it's important to state that non-specialists in the core sciences can also be encouraged to learn practical skills. Tech is an enabler after all. All right, so I think he's just an additional point there, but I think the first main point is something I would like you to speak to, how we can be more intentional in making everyone appreciate the SDGs and buying into it. Professor Jauro, it's for you. You need to unmute, please. You need to unmute. We can't hear you right now. Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you very much. I think the speaker is right. A lot of people are not aware of what are these SDGs in the first place. So we need to carry out vigorous sensitization. The SDGs, we know they are 12 in number, they are 17 in number from 1 to 17. So, and most of them, they're interdependent, right from ending hunger, ending poverty, off to the need for collaboration, which is SDG 17, which we need to collaborate, partnership, in order to get to achieve the 16 goals. Really, we need to do a lot of sensitization. People need to know about them. And as you have said, there is need for inter-agency collaboration. The MDS of government, we need to come together and identify those that within each of the agencies for you so that we sensitize the public and get them key in. Likewise, the government is doing its best, and we know the present challenges of the economy. So if you look at how far we have gone, Nigeria, in the achievement of the SDGs really is not encouraging. So we need to do more, and I agree with the speaker. So thank you very much.
All right, so we certainly need to be more vigorous in our sensitization. Thank you for that. Axel, I have an interesting question I would like you to speak to. Now, it's one that concerns me because it speaks to importing waste into a country like Nigeria. So the question is, can waste be imported into Nigeria? And he's using the example of shredded tires. I think this person potentially is joining us from abroad, and he actually says he has stocks available. Now, when waste begins to move from one country to the other, I personally get concerned. But can you speak to this point?
Yes. Now, unfortunately, let's not draw a conclusion. There's a fast shipment going across the world. So we see countries where we see from New Zealand, we see tire chips going to India. We see material going from the US to the other part of the world, because there's always a deleveraging of where somewhere is a very high price, for example, the US, but the energy price is low, somebody wants it. But we have to be extremely careful with this, because first principle is that we should always take care first of our own waste. That means Nigerian waste, we should solve a problem, and it is extremely difficult to explain that we are importing waste from somebody else. However, then we go into the EPR system again. Why are tire chips shipped? So mainly they come out of the United Kingdom, where we have an EPR system where when you change your tires, you need to pay $2-3 per tire for disposal. But there are so many tires that actually they have a lot of value. And then they're shipped to Nigeria because actually there's money coming with it. So there's not so much harm in tire chips to ship them around. Where it gets more difficult is on electronic waste, where we talk about sorted municipal waste, which is, they call it recycled plastics. In principle, we should look to exporting. For me, it's a no. However, if you are a country and you don't have a solution, and another country has a very good solution, then maybe environmental-wise, it makes a lot of sense. So in the European Union, you see a lot of material going from one country to the other one because one country is way better than the other one. But we have to be extremely careful. It is very strange that we have tires in Nigeria, but they're not reused in cement kilns because we are dumping them in the landfill. The landfill in Lagos is full of tires. But nobody's paying for it, and therefore it's very difficult to actually find the solution. But import is a dangerous thing, yes.
I get that sense myself, so thank you for speaking to that point. There is a question here for Dr. Alex and also for Professor Jaro on the sustainability of renewable resources. This person would like to know about awareness programs in promoting sustainability of energy resources. So I think that the oil and gas space is one where there will be great concerns around sustainability, but do you have something to say about this, Alex?
Certainly. I mean, one of the big things we focus on is ensuring that we do our work in a safe and sustainable manner. And sustainability endeavors are certainly a pillar of how we build the business and how we think about the future. We have about 3 ways of doing this. There's directly impacting the ecosystem, right? Okay, and we, amongst other partners, look at plastic collection. You know, Axel, you'll be surprised, especially from the lagoon in front of the office and getting all of that out, to sustainable fishing programs in the communities in which we actually operate in the Niger Delta. As you're aware, the level of pollution there is something that causes the country concern, and the operating entities there are in a huge bind, trying to ensure that as they operate, they leave the environments in a sustainable manner, i.e. a way that people can continue to farm and fish and do the things they did before the operations came. So there is certainly a huge drive in that direction. We have set up something else to deal with the populace. So we talk about, we have something called TAP, which is a feeding program with an agenda to eradicate hunger within the country, one state at a time. We have an Nwando Foundation, which focuses primarily on primary education. I mean, the statistics show that if you engage in education at a very young age, you are certainly able to stay in it the further you grow. And there are clear statistics to show that. And I think, Khaled spoke about that earlier on, is by feeding that pipeline, engineering, and ensuring that the output from that pipeline feeds into the productivity of the nation and the continent. And then, of course, the final is in our own ability as a country, as a company, to reach out and make sure that amongst the communities within the country and among societies, we have the right partnerships to drive change in the government. So whilst we talk about sustainability, there's several aspects of this that we focus on, but we like to bring it all together, which is one is, engaging and driving policy, ensuring that our operations are safe and leave behind an ecologically safe environment. But lastly, like I spoke about, developing the pipeline through education and empowering the youth to support and create a productive economy. That for me will be my comment.
Thank you very much. I think Wale is just going to dial back in a moment. I think that same question, thank you, Dr. Alex, that same question applied to the other panelists as well.
Thank you very much. When you talk about sustainability of energy resources, the Nestle as an enforcement agency, one of our major mandates is to ensure the sustainable use of the Nigerian natural resources. So these natural resources involve the energy sources. So we know that for sustainability, we need to switch from the normal energy we use to sustainable energy sources like the sunlight, the energy from the water sources, and others. So what we do is to carry out sensitization. So sensitization is key. We engage all stakeholders year-round, and we educate the populace on the need to switch to renewable energy sources. So instead of using firewood in our households, especially in the villages, they should look at alternative sources, and the government always engages in campaign all year round, and we use where energy efficient stoves are being distributed to encourage people to at least imbibe some of these energy efficient processes. So we are always in the forefront when it comes to the awareness campaign to do with sustainable energy resources, where we use the media always to talk about it, and we'll continue to do so, because clean energy, clean and affordable energy, we know is SDG 7. So for we to achieve that, we have to carry out this sensitization. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I have a question here for Mr. Tanko Mohammed. Is recycling a focus for Nigeria's automobile industry at any point? You want to speak to that, please?
Pardon me?
Is recycling a focus for Nigeria's automobile industry at any point?
Well, actually, I don't get the recycling you're talking about, unless if I don't think for now that is actually what the automotive industry in Nigeria is looking at. Because at now, when you look at most of the industries in Nigeria, automotive industries in Nigeria, they are always at the production level of SKD. And SKD is something you just bring in, as it is, it's just like more of assemblage. So it is maybe by the time you reach at the level of CKD, where you are starting things almost at the primary level, that maybe that issue can even come up. But at this level, actually, we are not looking at that concept of recycling, actually. Unless if you are looking at maybe they're looking at the local content, then if you are looking at the local content issue, it is issue that I will say even in our own factory, at a point we have already reached up to 50% local content. And at that time, we were providing opportunity for about 70 companies in Nigeria to produce different parts, different products for the assembly of our vehicles. So if we're looking at the local content, as you have indicated earlier, it is an area that I think it is very, very important. And it's an area that will touch on so many of the goals we're even talking about. Because on the local content, it reduces imports. A reduction of imports will to a large extent increase the strength of the Naira, which is being weakened daily by the importation of the several parts that we import in Nigeria. Again, by the time you encourage local content production, like I said, at a time when we were employing up to 70 companies producing parts for PAN, so you will see there is provision of employment. So employment opportunity is being given through that. And again, if we look at the two of them, the Naira value, the employment, and by the time 70 companies are producing for only one company, you are increasing the GDP of Nigeria. So the GDP is increased by more production by these people. And again, these companies must be able to employ skilled people and developing their skills over time. So doing this will to a large extent also increase skills. And when we are always talking about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So when you look at this, the requirement when we encourage local content production in Nigeria, the requirement for these STEM people will increase. And when it increases, which means there is also provision of employment opportunities. So actually, it's going to be a very positive thing if we do it that way.
Thank you. Very clear. It's very pleasing to hear that local content is critical and circular economy impact as well. Thank you. This is a question for Axel. Axel, there's a strong link between the circular economy and the environment. What are the interrelationships and how can these links be enhanced for the triple bottom line? And by that, I specifically refer to the people, planet, and profit.
I've already answered that in my stake in the beginning, that people and the environment and circular means it creates a cleaner environment, better societies to live in. It will create jobs. It's good for the planet, for the food chain, for the land, the ocean, and the sea. So I've answered these things question already.
Okay, but if we just elaborate on it from the perspective of how we can turn that and fuse that into our culture. And as we also alluded to the curriculum as well, and how that can be better embedded in the society as well, and the world, quite frankly, at large.
No, it's a variety of things. So of course, it's already mentioned. Education, of course, is an important one, that people are aware and that they're educated on this. Secondly, we then also need to provide the infrastructure that when you want to be circular, you want to be environmental friendly, that actually you can dispose your waste in a certain way, that it also ends up into a system where it belongs. And that means then we go to point number 3, that we need to seek for vision from the government, because these things only will run through proper vision and legislation. And also mentioned today, an EPR system is one of these tools which actually could create an economical environment where these things are possible. So it's a variety. It's not one thing which will solve it, but education, infrastructure, and an economical model through the vision of government. And it needs government support and government push. Otherwise, it will not happen.
Thank you.
All right. Folashade, my sincere apologies. Even with your best intentions, these things can happen. So let's just say I got cut off. But I think we have pretty much run out of time. So maybe it's a good time for me to begin to just wrap up on some of the key takeaways, which I think are very important. And the first point I would like to emphasize is that we must utilize, and I think Dr. Alex made this point, that we must utilize what we have to get what we want on the continent. He spoke to resource endowment, and we should use that strategically. And then also there was a point he made about investments in the areas where we do have these endowments. And then there was also a point around the extended producer responsibility and innovative waste management strategy. It's something that we need to make work in Nigeria, and hopefully we can get that done. And education needs to be more functional. I think that was a very important point made by the CEO of Peugeot Nigeria. And we need to also be deliberate about educating women rather, and technical training was highlighted in that regard. Legislation and enforcement is something that we must advocate for. So I think we all have to participate in this. We need to advocate for legislation that would support, improve the protection of the environment, things that we can do to enforce the rules. And we all have to speak up to make that happen. There was also a point about revamping Nigeria's educational system, specifically the curriculum, to be more viable in the context of the circular economy. And gender diversity must be an intentional campaign. I think that point was also made very clearly. And we need to vigorously sensitize the general populace and, of course, entrepreneurs, business owners, business managers about the SDGs and why they should all buy in. Well, I think on that note, I'd like to say a big thank you to all my panelists. I think I have run out of time. Maybe I would just allow the panelists, I think I still have a few more minutes. So if they can all just give a few parting statements on their thoughts about what we've heard today. Starting with you, Axel.
I have not so much to add. The only thing what I would like to say is that Nigeria in this case is not the only country with the same situation. And I think many countries struggle with the same questions which we have discussed today. And I think the network worldwide, which is available in Asia and in Middle East Africa, that collaboration between these countries would actually help to accelerate. There are lots of digital innovations taking place. There are lots of new technologies which we also offer. We have waste apps where we are engaging rag pickers on landfills to create value through EPR systems. All these things exist. We have bubble barriers to clean up rivers, which we utilize in India. The EPR system is a bit more mature in India. It's already implemented 3 years ago with good success and failure. But I think that countries would really benefit to talk to each other, really to learn from the mistakes and to avoid that we can do this again, and that we would accelerate. And that's maybe something I would like to add to the discussion as a final.
All right, thank you very much. I'd like to go now to Alex, if you can.
Thank you very much, Wale. I'd like to thank you for an amazing session to start off with, and just thank Lafarge again for bringing us all together. It's not every time in life you get a sneak peek into the future. COVID has given us that. God rest the souls of those who have died, but those of us that are alive have the responsibility of charting a great future for this country and the continent. The worst thing we can do is ignore this never happened. Digitization is upon us. We must understand this, the circular economy is real. We must be and build strong institutions. Institutions are the backbone of any economy and hold our governments accountable. That's it for me, Wale. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, Alex. Professor Jaro, if you can also briefly closing comments from you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alex. What I want to say is the EPR program is a very, very good program, which would allow us to have a circular economy. And at the same time, a lot of value chains will be gotten from it. A lot of green jobs will be created. So I urge all of you to key into it. And when we do that, apart from wealth creation, we're going to have a cleaner and healthier environment, which will lead to a sustainable development in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mohammed. If you can also briefly, closing comments from you. You need to unmute. Sorry, we can't hear you right now. Yes,
I
go
want
ahead.
to say thank you very much for organizing this very, very interesting discussion. And I think it is very, very encouraging that you have started doing such a thing. And I hope whatever has been discussed here, the recommendations given will not be left in the cooler. And I hope they will reach the actual place that they are going to be utilized. And I hope and pray that you will continue to organize similar discussions in the future so as to get similar recommendations and forward them to the right quarters that they are going to be utilized for the betterment of our country. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mohammed. And thank you again to our audience. Of course, many thanks to Lafarge Africa for putting this together. On that note, I'd like to hand over to the CEO of Lafarge Africa, Khaled El Dokani. Khaled, over to you for some closing comments.
Thank you so much, Wally. It's again, it's a very excellent webinar. Very, very insightful discussions, talks, and remarks from everyone. Since this is our last webinar in the series of 4, so allow me that my closing remarks will be a little bit extensive and beyond what we have discussed today as well. So for us as Lafarge Africa, me as a country CEO, and being part of Lafarge Wholesome as an international company, I'm truly inspired about the last 4 weeks and the level of in-depth commitment and discussions we had in the different sessions and the webinars. I'm glad that we have now gotten to a point where there is a sort of alignment on the necessity of cooperation and working together. This is a start, not an end. We, as Lafarge Africa, we are committed to capitalize on these 4 webinars and build the relation, the bridges among all the panelists that have joined us in the last 4 sessions and beyond, with the engagement of all the people who attended the webinars. And there has been extensive number of people that have joined us as viewers, and they have showed a lot of interest in establishing relations, connections, support towards the cause. In the beginning, and the deliberate work and identifying the opportunities leading to this inspiring and most important initiative on the SDG of 2030. We started this on August 19th with the sustainability series. We have played back a few times to see how can we strengthen the work that we currently do. Some of the highlights of these series included the following. COVID-19 has enforced new realities on us. This requires to shift our mindset to achieve the SDG by 2030, and we should not really delay on that so we are not missing the station of 2030. We must be resourcefully proactive now to ensure that all efforts, resources, and commitments are targeted to achieving the goals. Businesses must fully integrate environmental, social, and governance into their operating models and value chain. The need to refocus on what we must collectively work together to achieve should be more measurable and to accelerate the sustainable development goals going forward. This is the time for corporates to leverage their networks. Partnerships cannot be overemphasized in that particular time. Opportunities about commercializing the SDG, which was one of the topics we have highlighted in previous webinars. We have to create a commercial aspect to the SDGs and to the beneficiaries, whether on the government side or on the private sector side. Deploying mechanisms and tools that can deliver more impact, such as offering bonds and creating shared value platforms, will progress us greatly in our desired direction. It's time to rethink how we are implementing the SDG. Finally, committing to the SDG is committing to humanity. It's time for action. It's time to work and do more impactful work together as a team, as a country, and as a society. I would like to express my profound gratitude to the thought leaders who have partnered with us on this journey. Thank you for doing great work, for investing your time, your effort, your capital in different forms. We are grateful to our board of directors led by our chairman for displaying commitment to sustainability leadership with their support, participation, and constant feedback. I'm most delighted that we have them represented in all of our sessions. We appreciate our partners and all participants who joined us from Wednesday that we had the first session to this closing session. We must all be catalysts for the change that we wish to see. Thank you all for the team that worked with me, and I worked with them on our social sustainability development and communication for the great effort. And thanks for Lafarge Africa team from the ground floor up to the ExCon teams. I would like to extend my thanks to everybody, and let's progress on our SDG goals. Thank you so much and have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Do have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us, everyone.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Wale, let's catch up now at some point. Eh?
Oh, absolutely. I'll reach out. Sounds good.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Wale. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Falashade. I think it went well.
It's